keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Well done. Let the doors be open quand ouvre les portes. Let's see who's ready. Statement by members. Déclaration de député. L'honneur de député de Mont-Royal.
Mr. Speaker, wherever you travel in the world today, you are likely to see a Chabad house. Chabad is one of the largest Jewish Hasidic movements. Chabad institutions seek to satisfy religious, social, cultural, educational, and humanitarian needs throughout the world. Right now, Chabad is playing a leading role in Ukraine, providing humanitarian support and assistance. The good works and outreach of Chabad was the vision of Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. Known as the Rebbe, people would travel across the world to his home in Crown Heights to seek his wisdom and advice. The Rebbe was born in April 1902, and this week would be his 120th birthday. 120 is a very special age in Judaism, and I want to use this special occasion to congratulate the Rebbe for all his good works, and to congratulate all of the Chabad envoys in Canada, including but not limited to Rabbi Mendel and Sarah Raskin in Côte St. Luc, Rabbi Moshe and Nechama New in Hampstead, and Rabbi Moshe and Dina Krasnowski in TMR, who do such incredible work in my riding. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, not too long ago, the federal government considered allowing new financial providers to enter Canada's protected banking sector. Canada's big banks argued additional competition would limit their ability to deliver in-person services and that they would act in the interest of our communities. However, these promises have been forgotten by at least one Toronto head office. Over 2,000 of my constituents on Grand Manan were recently notified the island's only bank would be shutting down. The bank says it's a business decision, even though Grand Manan is a very prosperous fishing community. Scotiabank wants islanders to take a 90-minute ferry trip to the mainland, which costs $40, plus drive another 30 minutes for in-person banking services. If this closure happens, it would signal to the entire industry that charging for in-person services is acceptable. Other G7 nations have taken steps to ensure rural communities aren't being gouged by an uncaring banking sector. The Liberal government must do something, and they must stand up for communities like Grand Manan.
The honourable member for Etobicoke Centre.
Mr. Speaker, today is Tartan Day in Canada and the anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Our Growth in 13. Contributions of Scots and their descendants to the fabric of Canadian society. Among early settler communities, Scots helped map Canada, build railway, create national parks, and found universities. Well, we know the stories of Scottish Canadians like Alexander Graham Bell, Agnes MacPhail, Nellie McClung, and many prime ministers. Almost 5 million of us claim Scottish descent and have our own stories. We proudly share our Scottish culture, from Gaelic singing, Highland dancing, piping to Scottish country dancing, that has been carefully passed on through generations. Today and always we celebrate the friendship between Canada and Scotland and the modern day opportunities, including Gaelic Month in May in Nova Scotia. Canada is Alpa Riguliev Ahela.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, on the 24th, a terrible fire turned into a horrifying situation for all of the Lac-Saint-Jean region. I'd like to pay tribute to the exemplary bravery of Dominique Jean, a family man from Normandin who tragically perished. His story is that of a courageous and devoted man. He did not hesitate to replace one of his colleagues who was off sick that day, and he was there firefighting at the fire on a dairy farm in Saint-Edmond-les-Plaines, but he got stuck under the crumbling roof. He was pulled from the wreckage by his colleagues, who were equally brave, but he unfortunately succumbed to his wounds. He had been working for the firefighting service for 18 years, and people said that his heart was as big as a village. He gave his life to protect our community. On behalf of everyone in the region, I'd like to express our sincere condolences to his family, Marie-Pierre, Marc-Antoine, and Isabelle, as well as firefighters in his service who lost a brother and a friend. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Oakville North, Burlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nav Bhatia arrived humbly in Canada in 1984 amongst anti-Sikh riots in India. He struggled to find work as a mechanical engineer and decided to work as a car salesman. With dedication and hard work, Nav became a success in the automotive industry and eventually became a Canadian icon and the Toronto Raptors superfan. During Sikh Heritage Month, we celebrate the many contributions Canadians of Sikh heritage have made to our country and communities. And we also must recognize the systemic racism that many Sikhs faced in Canada. In honor of Sikh Heritage Month, I will be hosting a free screening of CBC's Superfan, The Nav Bhatia Story on Monday, April 11th at 7 p.m. at Film.ca Cinemas in Oakville. Nav Bhatia will be in attendance to join me for a Q&A session following the screening. Though tickets are limited, I invite everyone in my riding of Oakville, North Burlington to register for this free event on my social media and to attend. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Last week, Pope Francis met an Indigenous delegation and offered a clear public apology for the role played by certain Catholic entities in the implementation of the federal government's residential school policy. The Pope also expressed his desire to come to Canada soon. This critical step happened because of sincere engagement between Indigenous peoples and the Church. Many Indigenous peoples are active members of the Catholic Church. Indigenous Catholics like St. Kateri live out church teaching on love, forgiveness, universal human dignity, and subsidiarity. And these ideas provide the clear basis for rejecting any project of cultural assimilation or state domination of the family. Christianity is about following the teachings of Jesus regardless of the spirit of the age or the consequences. History is full of examples of Christians who fail to fully live out these teachings, and I am one of them. The call of Jesus to sacrificial love and to the affirmation of human dignity is always radical. And in an age when colonialism was widely accepted, many church organizations were simply not radical enough. Some here wish to use these failures to attack the church and further subvert it to state power, but that is the wrong direction and would enable other abuses. The failures of the residential school era should point to the need for the church to be an authentic moral witness for Christian teachings on truth and justice, regardless of government policy or the spirit of the age.
The honourable member for Beaches, East York.
Mr. Speaker, local journalism is a public good that we need to defend, and on behalf of my community, I want to recognize the 50th anniversary of our local Beach Metro News. Its first edition was 4 pages, with an editorial that said, "Our success as a newspaper will depend on the quality of the news we write and the community's response to the idea of a paper that will reflect and comment on their interests and concerns." Well, both the quality of its work and our community's response and support has kept the paper going these 50 years. As a nonprofit committed to free distribution, the Beach Metro relies on a small but mighty staff and wouldn't exist without its huge network of volunteers. Thank you to everyone who has helped to make the paper what it is. 50 years is worth celebrating, but we also need to recognize the reality that relying solely on declining advertising revenue puts local journalism in jeopardy. So, congratulations, Beach Metro, on reaching such an important milestone. To its readers, let's directly support our community paper in its new fundraising drive and see it through another 50 years. It's a local public good that we need to defend.
The honourable member for Davenport.
It is my absolute pleasure to rise in the House today to recognize 2 residents in my downtown Toronto riding of Davenport who are listed in Maclean's power list of 50 Canadians. The first is Cameron Bailey, who serves as the CEO of the Toronto Film Festival, where he leads a team that annually delivers an exceptional program of international Canadian cinema. He's a champion for the arts, a champion for Canadian and international talent, and his work has attracted worldwide recognition of TIFF. Our second resident is Nick Saul, who's the co-founder and CEO of Community Food Centres Canada, an organization that tackles food insecurity by building health, belonging, and social justice through the power of good food. With 14 centres across the country serving almost 180 communities, Nick has successfully started a good food movement that's improving the lives of millions of Canadians. Both Cameron and Nick are doing incredible work that's changing how we think and live. I've always said that Davenport is filled with amazing leaders, and I'm proud to have Maclean's recognize two of them on the power list. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary Signal Hill.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow is Budget Day, and this Liberal government will be reaping significant revenues additional revenues paid for by hardworking oil and gas workers in Alberta and corporate taxes from oil and gas companies. Now, despite what the lefties will tell you, there are no subsidies for oil and gas companies. Mr. Speaker, however, this government should be saying thank you. However, it's the Liberals and the other fringe parties who want to phase out oil and gas, Mr. Speaker. So backed by the NDP, the Bloc and the Greens, the Prime Minister is determined to kill the goose that is laying the golden egg. Anywhere else in the world, Mr. Speaker, on Budget Day, governments would be saying thank you to the thousands of workers in the energy industry for driving this economic recovery. Not in Ottawa, though, Mr. Speaker. All Albertans can expect here from the spend-DP Liberal government is the middle finger made so famous by the Prime Minister's father.
The honourable member for Labrador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For rural communities, including many in Labrador, the pandemic has magnified how essential access to reliable internet really is. And our government understands that. That's why in 2020, we launched a Universal Broadband Fund, a $2.75 billion investment that will help connect every Canadian to high-speed internet by 2030. Today, I want to share the great news, Mr. Speaker, that the Government of Canada will invest over $23 million to connect more than 1,500 households in rural areas across Labrador to high-speed internet. Funding will be allocated to the Nunavut government for a project benefiting the Inuit communities of Rigolet, Postville, Makkovik, Nain, Hopedale, and the First Nation community of Natwashish, and a separate contract to Big Land Networks to connect the residents of Northwest River and the Sheshatshiu First Nation. These investments ensure that rural communities here are no longer limited in opportunity or service because of a lack of broadband connectivity. We are listening and we are responding to the needs of Canadians.
The honourable member for Saskatoon University.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this government likes to talk a big game when it comes to green energy and following science. Yet, when the opportunity to follow through presents itself, the Liberals let themselves be blinded by ideology. Ignoring the scientific consensus by excluding nuclear energy from Canadian green bonds, lumping nuclear energy in with alcohol, tobacco, and gambling. Others, like the EU or the IPCC, recognize that nuclear energy is key to a sustainable future. I join with over 10,000 people that have already signed my petition, asking the government to accept the science and end its partisan opposition to nuclear and support clean energy in Canada for the next century. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Moose Jaw, Lake Centre, Lanigan.
Mr. Speaker, everyone in this House and in this country remembers where they were 4 years ago today when the Humboldt Broncos hockey team was involved in a horrific crash. It became a sad day in Saskatchewan and across our nation and across the world. 15 young lives were tragically taken away from us far too soon. The outpouring of support was immediate. Who can forget the images from across our great country of people leaving hockey sticks outside their doors? During times like these, it is hard to find the silver linings and answer the question why something so tragic like this would happen. But the crash brought out the country, brought out the best of our country, and inspired people to register as organ donors. Mr. Speaker, this tragedy showed us the true spirit of Saskatchewan and all Canadians. Through horrific circumstances, the best of what we are comes through. May God bless those who experience loss. Thank you.
Calling up the deputy de Hochelaga.
The honourable member for Hochelaga. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to recognize the extraordinary work of Jimmy Borivage-Vigneux. the Director General of the Business Development Corporation of Hochelaga-Maisonneuve. He worked hard for 10 years to develop the neighborhood, and thanks to his leadership, the neighborhood during the pandemic was shown by its resilience and its presence in the streets of the neighborhood. With all sorts of activities, for example, the largest outside gathering of Quebec craftspeople, Jimmy and his team rethought the way streets could work and brought a creative and unique look at our community. And he also cared greatly about the environment and founded the 1,000 Tons Mission, and that is something he's going to continue to work on. To date, more than 20,000 people have participated in removing 240 tons of waste from waterways, all thanks to Mr. Vigneux's volunteer work over the last 4 years. Imagine what he's going to do once he's full-time. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Port Moody Coquitlam.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday was Invisible Work Day. Invisible work is mostly done by women. Family care, elder care, family business supports, volunteering, these are an integral part of the economy. Yet this unpaid work is not respected. This lack of recognition is not by accident. It's rooted in gender discrimination. Invisible work is gendered. It is women and girls who carry the load. Dans le monde, 12 milliards de...
Around the world, 12.5 billion hours of unpaid care and domestic work is done every day.
It is time to acknowledge the size of this invisible workforce and its value. In Canada, invisible work equates to $350 billion per year. This is 16% of the GDP. The women and girls that take on invisible work are valuable. As government, we must recognize it in our words, measure it in our economy, and adopt policies to finally achieve gender equality.
Hear, hear. L'honorable député de Belleuil-Chambly.
Monsieur le Président, le 21...
Mr. Speaker, on April 21st, I will be one of millions of Quebecers who are faced with a major loss. After District 31 stops airing, we'll have lost so many beloved characters. It's really hard. It's hard to accept. It's hard to lose what Luc Dion should have written before Annie would reprove him, and to lose everything that we saw when every week we were getting incredible episodes from this remarkable team. For his remarkable work on television, and thanks to having given Quebecers something to enjoy daily together, to talk about around the water cooler or with their families, I'd like to thank Luc. I'd also like to thank Fabienne Larouche and all other members who made this happen at Radio-Canada.
The Honourable Member for Regina Louvain.
God looked down on his frozen tundra and said, I need a skater. So God made a hockey player. God said, I need somebody strong enough to tussle with the enemy, yet sportsman enough to shake his hand when it's over. Somebody not afraid to lose, but with enough heart to despise not winning. So God made a hockey player. God said, I need somebody to stand in front of a rush of sticks and skates, ice the bruises that show, rub the ones that don't, suit back up and do it all over again because your teammates are counted on you. So God made a hockey player. God said, I need somebody with enough desire to never quit, enough passion to never be good enough, and with enough grit to take a piece of frozen rubber to the cheek occasionally. So God made a hockey player. God said, I need someone who is an athlete, a warrior, unselfish, hardworking, strong-willed, sharp-eyed, and quick-witted, yet human enough to look around him, pause, and proudly call his teammates his family. So God made a hockey player. On the 4th anniversary, we remember our Humboldt Broncos, and I ask all of you to leave some sticks on the porch tonight, just in case they need a spare one upstairs.
The Honourable Member for Northwest Territories.
Mr. Speaker, 600 years ago, when the Europeans claimed America as their land, part of the justification they used came from the doctrine of discovery. A statement from the Pope at the time. It advocates for the superiority of the people on the basis of national origin or racial, religious, ethnic, or cultural differences. Why should that matter now? This seems like ancient history, but yet it was addressed in both an UNDRIP and the Truth and Reconciliation Report. Surely we're well past the time to throw these types of racist, illegal, immoral, and false ideologies where they belong. We need to continue to advance the Truth and Reconciliation Report, recommendation 45 to 47, to develop the Royal Proclamation of Reconciliation and to ensure these concepts are not reflected in any Canadian law or policy. And hopefully, in addition to the apology from the Pope, there will be movement on eradicating this doctrine from the Church as well. Merci, Mr. Speaker.
Now, I believe there's been agreement amongst the parties for a moment of silence on the loss of the players in the Humboldt crash. Merci beaucoup. Oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
David is a 28-year-old husband and father and the owner of a small business that employs 3 people. He and his wife both work more than full-time, but he's told me that they can never afford a home. David says he feels like a failure and like he's letting his family down. Like most Canadians, David doesn't come from money or a rich family. Apart from winning the lottery, there is literally no chance that he will ever be able to afford a home. My question for the Prime Minister is, what would he like to say to David?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've heard from Canadians across the country, like David and others, who are facing challenges with the rising cost of living, with the crushing pressures of the housing market. And that's why we're focused on supporting them. We made a promise to David and to Canadians like him across the country that we'd have their backs through the difficult 2 years of the pandemic and beyond, and that's exactly what we continue to do. In tomorrow's budget, you will see significant investments in housing, in supports for families, in a way that continues to grow our economy for families from coast to coast to coast for years to come.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
The problem is the Liberals' housing programs are helping no one. Young people like David are not interested in programs like sharing the equity of their home with the government. In fact, it would appear that not many people across the country are interested. There's only been 9 applications to the shared equity housing program. It's a bit of an embarrassment, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the Liberals don't seem to have a solution to the housing crisis. Can the Prime Minister admit that actually he doesn't have a clue as to what to do with this housing crisis? And as long as he is Prime Minister, young people in Canada are just out of luck.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
In 2017, we moved forward with the first national housing strategy that brought forward significant investments and programs to support families. At the same time, we recognize there is no one solution to the housing challenge. We need to keep moving forward with a broad array of supports that will help different families facing different challenges across the country. And that is exactly what we've continually done, innovating, putting forward supports, making sure that with investments that support families and ease their way into the housing market, we're going to be able to respond to this challenge.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, the more money they spend, the more the cost of everything goes up.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that tomorrow we will see an irresponsible, high-tax, high-spend budget from the NDP Liberal coalition, one that promises to drive up inflation. The more money these guys spend, the more everything becomes more expensive. Canadians are worse off today than they were 6 years ago. The Prime Minister is ignoring calls for a responsible budget. He's ignoring calls for tax relief for Canadians. The only people he seems to be listening to are the NDP. And the only reason he's doing it is so that he can hold power.
Yep.
Isn't that the truth?
That's right.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the Leader of the Conservative Opposition spent the first two questions telling us we needed to do more to support Canadians, and then spent this question saying we're doing far too much for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, we've made a commitment to have Canadians' backs while remaining fiscally responsible. That's exactly what we've done over these past 6 years. That's what we're going to continue to do with tomorrow's budget and with our investments in Canadians over the coming years.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, in terms of public finance, this Prime Minister has less credibility than others. In 2015, Canadians were able to become house owners, but inflation from this Prime Minister has made access to housing impossible. Things cost twice as much, and interest rates will continue to rise. Can the Prime Minister admit that his promises are empty words and help Canadians from the youngest to the oldest and give them a break? The Right Honourable Prime Minister, as we've done for years, we're investing to support Canadian families, to support young people who want to buy their first home, and to help low-revenue families in terms of rent. We're going to continue to have Canadians' backs while remaining fiscally responsible. This is the choice we have made as a government, but the Conservatives like to say that we're doing too much for Canadians, but we know that we're going to continue to support them, and that's exactly what we're going to do for them and for economic growth. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. What path will the Prime Minister take tomorrow? The Honourable Member for Pontiac, who says she's fiscally responsible, revealed what is currently being said in the Liberal backbench. What I sense from my colleagues is that we're going to have to be more judicious in our spending choices. We'll have to do more with the dollar than we're doing now. That's a hard criticism of that fiscal management. Tomorrow, will the Prime Minister be smart and responsible, or will he turn his back on his own Liberal caucus and Canadians by implementing the NDP's agenda? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, we heard the same thing from the Conservatives. They were criticizing us to have invested too much to support families and small businesses and to support workers throughout this pandemic. And that's what we did, and this allowed our economy to come roaring back, and it allowed us to recover all the jobs that were lost. And we're going to continue to be there to support Canadian families. The Conservatives want us to do less for families, but we are going to continue to have their backs to support them and to be fiscally responsible. The Honourable Member for Ballet-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Minister of the Environment said a contradiction. He said that they were waiting for federal environmental evaluations with respect to Baie du Nord, and then he said it was provincial jurisdiction. A Liberal that mentions provincial jurisdiction, well, that's interesting. This, because there was no incoherence or clarity, it doesn't really give them much credibility in terms of GHGs. Can the Prime Minister now announce that he's going to say no to the Baie du Nord project? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, for almost 7 years now, we were elected to show that economic growth and protecting the environment and the fight against climate change go hand in hand. And that's exactly what we've done for years. Now we have the most ambitious and concrete plan that Canada has had in terms of reducing GHGs. And at the same time, we're investing concretely to help families and workers to get through this transformation period for energy. We're always going to be here to show that we understand that the economy and the environment go hand in hand. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. We're discovering that the Baie du Nord project may be approved or is on the point of being approved. That's a surprise to no one. 1 billion barrels. The IPCC has been very critical with respect to governments and their responsibility. Although they didn't name our government, they know that they're talking about Canada. There is a serious incoherence between the proposed reduction plan by this government and this Baie du Nord project. Mr. Speaker, does the PM think that the IPC is wrong? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, for several years now, we have made science-based decisions and the best recommendations from experts across Canada and worldwide to put forth the most ambitious and concrete projects we've had in our country to protect the environment and to fight climate change and to create economic growth and prepare for the economy of the future. We're in the midst of transforming our economy to reduce our GHG emissions, and it will take time to get there, but we are going to be here with great determination that the Canadians require of us.
Member for Burnaby South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The IPCC report makes it absolutely clear that we are failing in doing enough to stop the climate crisis. Instead of presenting a real plan to fight the climate crisis, the government is doubling down on more fossil fuel subsidies with a carbon capture tax credit. Why does the government continue to insist on subsidizing wealthy oil and gas companies instead of investing in clean energy and workers?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians know what's at stake in the fight against climate change. It's why we're stepping up our climate emission by committing to more than $100 billion to climate action. We're ensuring we reduce methane emissions by 75% by 2030 and transitioning to a net zero electricity grid by 2035. We're also doubling our commitment to $5.3 billion to help developing countries fight climate change and protect biodiversity. And we will continue delivering ambitious and achievable climate action that protects our communities and builds a healthy future for everyone.
L'honorable député de Burnaby Sud.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. IPCC's report is clear. We didn't take enough action to tackle the climate crisis. And instead of presenting a real plan, the government continues to increase oil and gas subsidies with a carbon capture tax credit. Why is the government continue to increase wage subsidies rather than investing in workers and green energy? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, our emissions plan is the most comprehensive in the world. It'll give us a strong economy for all Canadians. We have been credible about all the contributions that every sector must do to make our plan work, and Clean Prosperity and other scientists have all approved our plan. We promised an ambitious plan and a doable one to create possibilities for Canadians, and that's exactly what our emissions reduction plan will do.
The Honourable Member for Abbotsford.
Well, Mr. Speaker, tomorrow we'll witness this Liberal government's very first NDP budget. The picture won't be pretty. Canadians should expect a tax and spend budget that will make inflation even worse than it is today. Gobs and gobs of unfocused spending, deficits as far as the eye can see, and of course higher taxes. So, can the Prime Minister tell us whether his budget will deliver a plan to fight the skyrocketing cost of living in Canada?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as is with every Liberal budget, our focus is on supporting Canadians and growing the economy for years to come. That's exactly what we're doing by making responsible investments in a fiscally responsible framework. That's what Canadians expect, and that's what we'll be delivering in investments in housing, investments to fight climate change and prepare for the clean economy, investments in Indigenous communities, making sure that we are growing the economy in ways that helps the middle class and everyone working hard to join it. That is our focus, Mr. Speaker.
I just want to say we made it to 11 questions without a whole lot of heckling. The honourable member for Abbotsford.
Well, Mr. Speaker, every Liberal budget is a tax and spend budget. More Liberal tax and spend policies mean even worse inflation. Wages haven't kept up with the cost of living, while the cost of groceries and gas and housing and pretty well everything else has become unaffordable. Millions of middle-class families have fallen behind. Remember when the Prime Minister promised to stand up for the middle class and those wanting to join it? What happened to that promise?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, global inflation caused first by this pandemic and now by Vladimir Putin's illegal war on Ukraine is putting pressure on families, from food prices to gas. Just like we did through the pandemic, we'll continue to have Canadians' backs and make life more affordable for families, seniors, and the middle class and those working hard to join it. We increased the Canada Child Benefit to match the cost of living. Conservatives voted against that. We moved forward with $10 a day childcare for families within the next 5 years. Conservatives voted against it. GIS for vulnerable seniors, more support for students, more affordable housing. Conservatives continued.
Now, just because we made it through 11 without a whole lot of heckling didn't mean we had to restart.
The honourable member for Bellechasse-les-Eichemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, Canadians can't take it anymore. They're suffocating. The cost of living and inflation are at the highest levels in 30 years. Everything is more expensive and salaries aren't keeping up. The government doesn't realize the distress of thousands of Canadians. Media reports also tell of unbearable situations. Tough choices are being made between paying for groceries or your rent. Can the Prime Minister commit to tabling a budget that will tackle inflation to allow Canadians to take a breather? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. It has been a priority for many years to make life more affordable for Canadians. Extreme weather events, supply chain issues, the war in Ukraine, and the pandemic have all affected the cost of prices of food. We have launched the local infrastructure project that will help nonprofit organizations to increase food security. We'll continue to be there to invest in families responsibly. We'll be there for Canadians, unlike the austerity proposed by the Conservatives.
Central Okanagan, Samilkameen Nicola.
In the last election, the Prime Minister cut and pasted from the Conservative housing plan and promised Canadians that, and I quote, "Houses shouldn't sit empty when so many Canadians are trying to buy a home. So we are going to ban foreign ownership in Canada for the next 2 years." Yet he's done nothing of the sort. Why does this Prime Minister habitually promise things he has no intention on delivering on, Mr. Speaker?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I will point out that the Conservative Party's marquee promise around housing was to give tax breaks to wealthy landlords to help them sell their buildings, things that wouldn't have helped any ordinary Canadians working hard to afford their homes. That's why we move forward with the 2017 National Housing Strategy. That's why in tomorrow's budget we will be making significant investments in housing, in supporting Canadians in the range of solutions that are necessary. There is no one solution, Mr. Speaker. There are only meaningful efforts across the board by this government to make sure that things get better for Canadians.
The honourable member for Bellechasse-les-Eichemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, the cost of real estate has skyrocketed. The average cost of a home under the Liberals has doubled from $413,000 to $816,000. This is shocking. Young people can't realize their dream of owning their first home. And in the rental market, even slums are renting at high prices. What does the government intend to do in its budget to give young people hope because they are a victim of its lack of action? The Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the cost of housing is a true source of concern for middle-class Canadians, particularly young people. This is why we've helped more than 2 million families to purchase a home, and we're investing 72 million in our national housing strategy. We supported the construction and renovation of more than 420,000 housing units, and intend to increase the number of housing units units considerably, and we still have work to do, and we're going to continue to focus on investments in families, in communities, and in the economy as needed. Thank you.
River Central Okanagan, Samilkami Nicola.
He promises, he spends, he fails, he spins, and then he repeats, Mr. Speaker. This Prime Minister just can't help himself, let alone help millennials who are stuck in their parents' basements. Even last week, he was in my home province of British Columbia promising more action on housing affordability. When millennials see housing prices double since 2015, when he was elected Prime Minister, they see through his empty words. Millennials are jaded. They're cynical about him, about his promises. When is he going to admit his housing failures, or is he just going to blame others for his failures?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize the pressures faced by Canadians in the housing market, particularly young Canadians, which is why, contrary to what the Conservatives are recommending, we're going to continue to invest in them and support them, because over the past years, with our investments, we've helped over 2 million families get the housing they need. We've committed $72 billion for the National Housing Strategy. We supported the creation and repair of over 440,000 homes. We've invested to increase rental units by over 71,000, but we recognize there's much more to do. With tomorrow's budget, that's what we're going to do.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Champley. Mr. Speaker, IPCC, the International Group of Experts on Climate, the highest authority in this area. Well, I don't know what the Prime Minister has done to undermine their expertise, but if we listen to the announcement this afternoon, the Baie du Nord project is a global catastrophe. Tell me, against this backdrop, is there someone thinks for real that Canada will achieve its reduction targets with this plan? The government should never be at the beck and call of oil companies. Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in recent years, we presented concrete plans and ambitious ones to fight climate change, and we are delivering on this necessary transformation in terms of reducing emissions. We are going to continue to do the work to bring Canadians to a carbon neutral future. We're going to do this by investing and forging partnerships and remaining committed to following the science. And that is how we're going to succeed and protect Canada and our planet and create good jobs for the middle class and for future generations. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Last year, the International Energy Agency warned that a ban on new oil and gas development was necessary to stop global warming. But the science mentioned by the Prime Minister spoke. The IPCC spoke. It confirms that there's no more room for fossil fuel expansion, period. We have 3 years to cap emissions. 3 years, Mr. Speaker. So we must reject the Baie du Nord project and its 30-year extraction of billions of barrels of oil. How can the Prime Minister say that he's for science if he approves Baie du Nord? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, our plan for reducing emissions is one of the most exhaustive in the world. It is going to offer pure air and a strong economy to Canadians. We have been credible in terms of all the contributions the sectors must bring to fight climate change, and we're going to respect these targets with all the decisions and choices we're going to make in the years to come. I'm not the only one to say that our plan is credible and concrete. The Climate Committee of Canada, Clean Prosperity, and other scientists have all approved our plan. We're going to continue to be there for Canadians in the fight against climate change. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, all Canadian families are affected by rising food, gas, and housing prices. That's what we call inflation. But this Liberal government has made prices rise in Canada. Why? Because this government has never controlled spending, and worse yet, it is increasing taxes like it did last Friday. We had to wait for the budget to be tabled, and this is the first time we're going to have an NDP Liberal budget. Can the Prime Minister say he will be responsible, control spending, and not raise taxes? Yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, inflation is a global inflation caused by the pandemic and by the illegal invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin. And it puts pressure on families across our country. We have been fighting the rising cost of food and oil, and that is why we continue to have Canadians' backs. As we've already done, we're going to continue to make families and seniors and middle-class lives more affordable with things like we've already done. We're going to enhance the CCB. We're going to create $10 a day childcare across the country. We're going to increase the GIS for the most vulnerable seniors. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, what I hope and what I feel, as my colleagues do as well, is that we're going to have to be more judicious in our spending choices. We have to do more with the dollar than what we do now. I am not the one, as a Conservative member, who said that. It's our Liberal colleague from Pontiac that stated this on behalf of their colleagues. So, once again, tomorrow we have an opportunity for a new budget, a new NDP Liberal budget. Can the Prime Minister listen to what their colleague is saying when she says we have to be responsible and not continue doing what we've been doing for 7 years, spending irresponsibly and increasing taxes? Even the Liberals are asking for this. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, every year around the same time, we're listening to the same refrain. Conservatives want to have austerity. We have to cut in services and programs for Canadians. But fortunately for Canadians, we're not listening to the Conservative policies as they want to cut spending for Canadians. We are acting responsibly and wisely to create economic growth, to bounce back from this pandemic and to help seniors and students and to help families. That's exactly what we're doing and what we have been doing for 7 years, and we're going to continue to do so. We're going to be responsible and invest in families.
For Kildone and St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow is Canada's first ever NDP Liberal government, and the stakes have never been higher for my generation. Many of us can't afford a house. We can't afford groceries. We can't afford to fill our tanks with gas. And we know dental care is not going to solve it. Pharmacare is not going to solve it. Child care is not going to solve it. Spending more money is not going to solve it, Mr. Speaker. Educated, fully employed young people can't get ahead in this country. So what's going to be in this budget tomorrow to give us some hope for the future, Mr. Speaker?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, to hear the Conservatives say that childcare is not part of the solution for families is to see once again the Conservatives just don't get it. The fact of the matter is that the thousands of dollars that families are going to be saving with the cut in half of childcare costs as of this very year will make a huge difference in their ability to buy groceries and gas as prices continue to rise. And our choice to invest in families, to invest in students, to invest in support for Canadians, as opposed to cutting services for them like the Conservatives want, is the right one for all of Canada.
The Honourable Member for Fort McMurray Cold Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like most parents, they want to leave a legacy for their children. I know so many parents who save and go without luxuries so they can pass something on to their kids. But under this government, runaway inflation is making saving nearly impossible. And out-of-control spending is saddling our children, like my 7-month-old son, Owen, with debt they'll never be able to pay off. Will the Prime Minister stop mortgaging our children's future to fund his promises to the NDP?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, since 2015, we've been investing in families with a Canada Child benefit that Conservatives voted against. It gives hundreds of dollars a month tax tax-free to families that need it. We move forward with child care agreements right across the country that not only will cut child care costs in half this year, but reduce to $10 a day within 5 years right across the country. These are initiatives that not only support families now, but create economic growth that will leave our kids and our kids' kids better off for generations to come.
Order. Order, please. The Honourable Member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, the IPCC report gave us a clear warning. If we don't act now, the hope of a livable future is burning up. But the Liberals keep throwing fuel on the fire. Instead of focusing on investments in green energy and good jobs, they continue to hand out billions to big oil. Instead of capping oil and gas emissions, they plan on increasing oil and gas production. How does the Prime Minister expect Canada to meet its climate targets when he is paying big oil to pollute?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as the member opposite knows, we are committed to phasing out fossil fuel subsidies in the next 2 years. We've already phased out 8 tax breaks for the sector. This week, we presented our emissions reduction plan that goes line by line to cut emissions and will inform our approach to cap and cut emissions from oil and gas that need to be part of the solution as we reach net zero by 2050. We are taking real action to fight climate change by committing over $100 billion to climate action and making sure that polluting is no longer free anywhere across the country, despite the objections of Conservative politicians. We will continue our work.
The Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay.
Well, last week the Prime Minister gave a huge thumbs up to increased oil production, and this week the IPCC said the planet is now at the tipping point of irreversible climate catastrophe. And the UN Secretary General has called out government leaders.
Order. The Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay.
Do I get to start over? Thank you. Mr. Speaker, last week the Prime Minister gave thumbs up to a massive increase in oil production, and this week the IPCC tells us the planet is now at the tipping point of irreversible climate catastrophe. And the UN Secretary General called out government leaders who are, quote, saying one thing on the environment and doing another. And he says they are, quote, lying, and the results will be catastrophic. We're talking about the future of our children here. This Prime Minister has clearly been carbon captured. Why does he continue to rubber stamp big oil projects while the planet is on fire?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, all Canadians know what's at stake in the fight against climate change, which is why we're stepping up our climate ambition by committing more than $100 billion to climate action, ensuring that we reduce methane emissions by 70% between now and 2030, and by transitioning to a net zero emitting electricity grid by 2035. We're also doubling our commitment to $5.3 billion to help developing countries fight climate change and protect biodiversity. We will continue delivering ambitious and achievable climate action that protects our communities and builds healthy futures for everyone.
The Honourable Member for Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam.
Get him, Ron. Mr. Speaker, Canadians have been clear. They want good jobs, a healthy environment, and a strong economy. Last week, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change unveiled the emissions reduction plan outlining the next steps towards achieving these priorities for all. Can the Minister of Environment and Climate Change tell us what are the objectives of this plan?
Well, I'm going to guess it's the Prime Minister is going to answer that. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to begin by thanking the member for Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, for his question and his incredibly strong hard work on the file. Canadians know what's at stake in the fight against climate change, and the emissions reduction plan we tabled last week is one of the most comprehensive in the world. The emissions reduction plan invests $9.2 billion into credible climate solutions and lays out sector by sector how we meet our goals. Our plan is about delivering clean air and a strong economy for Canadians. And I'd like to thank leaders from the environment, business, public and private sectors for their support.
The honourable member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, rural Canadians can't afford this spend-DP Liberal government. They've killed rural jobs in oil and gas, forestry, mining, and agriculture. They've caused record inflation and piled on red tape that crushes small businesses. Western rural municipalities want them to stop the carbon tax hike on fuel that makes everything more expensive. They say no. Conservatives ask the NDP Liberals to scrap new taxes and rein in spending. They say no. Will the NDP Liberals get out of the way and stop making things worse for rural Canadians?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our investments in rural Canada continue as we move forward on broadband investments, on cell coverage investments, and investments to support our farmers and our energy industries and our fisheries and forestry industries. We know that rural Canadians work incredibly hard in a very important time for our economy and our future, and we will be there to continue to support them every step of the way.
The honourable member for Lakeland.
So that's a really long no. The NDP Liberals, just like the Prime Minister just did, always talk about big spending and top-down government programs, but the results are record prices for fertilizer, fuel, and food, for heating and housing. Rural Canadians pay a rural tax of over $1,500 just to travel for medical care. None of those are luxuries. Farmers can't change the distance to their fields or to the store. Rural jobs aren't in office towers walking distance from home. Why do the NDP Liberals always either ignore or hurt rural Canadians with their tax, spend, and fail agenda?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, over the past number of years, we've continued to be there for rural Canadians, whether it's investments in agriculture, whether it's support for small communities, whether it's reaching out to resource communities to prepare for the future. We will continue to stand by Canadians from coast to coast to coast, and we won't simply fall back on slogans and easy solutions like the Conservatives do. We will work hand in hand with rural Canadians and indeed people from coast to coast to coast to build the kind of future we know everyone deserves to offer their kids and their grandkids.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, housing in the GTA is scarce and expensive, and it's getting worse. Home prices have doubled under this government, and Canada still has the fewest homes per capita of any G7 country. This government will muse about their so-called plans to fund affordable housing just to have their new NDP dance partners at every level of government oppose actual development. When will the Prime Minister tell Canadians why he thinks only those with a trust fund deserve the dream of home ownership?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the previous Conservative government for 10 years withdrew the federal government's engagement in housing, and therefore, unfortunately, we had to pick up an awful lot of slack since 2015. With the National Housing Strategy in 2017.
Order. Let's hear the answers, please. The Honourable Prime Minister, you can start again.
Mr. Speaker, after 10 years of Conservatives choosing to underinvest in housing, for the past 7 years, we've been making up the slack by investing in communities, by investing in a national housing strategy worth around $72 billion now, and continuing to move forward to support people in the GTA and indeed across the country be able to afford their homes, afford their rents, and move forward in a responsible way. That's what we've been focused on. That's what we will continue to do, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Speaker, more spending doesn't equal results.
Exactly.
It equals more inflation, and Canadians can't afford a home. Canada's fiscal house is on fire, and the NDP are pushing the Liberals to throw $1.68 gasoline on it. Canadians know one thing about the upcoming budget. It's going to be expensive. So will the Prime Minister have the courage to tell Canadians that he couldn't get the trust of the majority of voters, so he decided to spend taxpayer money and buy his majority here?
Yeah. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the member president wants to talk about results. Our investments in housing across this country have helped over 2 million families get the housing they need, supported the creation and repair of over 440,000 homes. I've invested to increase rental units by over 71,000. But yes, Mr. Speaker, we know there's more to do, which is why we won't be listening to Conservative politicians when they tell us to cut supports to Canadians, and instead we're going to continue to invest responsibly in families to help them build a better future for themselves and future generations.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois and the Prime Minister don't agree on health transfers. That's one thing. But now, healthcare workers are speaking to us, and we must listen. On Monday, professionals from across the healthcare spectrum met. Doctors, nurses, psychologists, physiotherapists, support staff, all of them are calling for a long-term increase in health transfers with no strings attached, because the federal government is not doing enough. All of them agree that piecemeal funding with conditions doesn't work. Most of all, they want the government to listen. So will the government meet with healthcare workers at a public summit on healthcare funding? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, throughout the pandemic, we have worked with the provinces and territories to protect Canadians from COVID-19, and we invested more than $63 billion more in healthcare because of the pandemic, because we knew that we had to be there for Canadians, but also to support healthcare workers. So we're going to continue to be there, to invest, and to work with provinces and territories, and we're going to be there to deliver results that Canadians expect for our healthcare system across the country. The Honourable Member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister cannot have the right to reject the opinion and expertise of our healthcare workers. They are the ones who keep our healthcare system going. Today, these men and women are calling for a long-term increase in federal funding that is recurrent and without conditions. They want to be able to plan the future of our healthcare system, and so they need foreseeability. Why won't the minister pledge right now to meet with these healthcare workers at a public summit? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, for 2 years, we celebrated our heroes of the healthcare system who have done extraordinary work to support Canadians throughout this pandemic. But we also listened to them, and we heard them, whether it be with more investment, and especially, Mr. Speaker, we need better results, better supports for our healthcare workers. That is why we are going to be there, and we have promised to be there in order to increase the healthcare transfers, but we're going to do it in partnership with the provinces and territories to ensure that these results are delivered for citizens and for workers.
Interlake Eastman. Mr. Speaker, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin has the blood of Ukrainians on his hands as his soldiers have raped, tortured, and slaughtered innocent civilians. These atrocities are war crimes and crimes against humanity. Putin must be stopped, and Canada must do more to help. It's reported that President Zelensky directly asked Canada for Harpoon anti-ship missiles, but this Prime Minister said no. So will the Prime Minister commit to send Harpoon missiles to Ukraine today, not weeks from now, but today, and help save Odessa?
Here, here. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the news of the senseless murders and systemic sexual violence towards innocent civilians in Bucha and elsewhere across Ukraine is egregious and appalling. We've seen throughout this conflict the targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure by Russia across Ukraine. We do believe that these crimes are war crimes and crimes against humanity. We are pursuing multiple international legal avenues in support of Ukraine, including at the International Criminal Court. And yes, we will continue to offer military aid to the Ukrainian forces.
The Honourable Member for Cumberland Colchester.
Mr. Speaker, it is clear that this Prime Minister has not met his commitment to Canadians for 7,500 doctors, nurses, and nurse practitioners. Oddly enough, at Health Committee, we've heard from the College of Family Physicians of Canada that we need at least 3,000 to 4,000 family doctors alone. Also, the Canadian Nursing Association states we're short about 60,000 60,000 nurses. 60,000. Right. In this budget, will the NDP Liberal Prime Minister admit he's failing Canadians from Spring Hill to Tidnish to Stewiacke, all of Nova Scotia, and all Canadians, and commit to sustainable and predictable healthcare funding?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, we see, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are both asking us to invest more in supporting Canadians while at the same time decrying that we're investing anything to support Canadians. Over the past 2 years, we invested an extra $63 billion in healthcare supports for Canadians, and we've committed to working in partnership with provinces and territories to deliver both more investments and more results for Canadians when it comes to healthcare. We look forward to working with provinces and territories as partners as we deliver the support for Canadians that they very much need and deserve.
The Honourable Member for Foothills.
The Liberals have failed on trade compensation for dairy, wine, spirits and beer producers and PEI potato farmers. They continue to fail Canadian agriculture with a punishing carbon tax. Well, let's review. The Liberals said the carbon tax would reduce emissions. False. Emissions have gone up. The Liberals said that the carbon tax would be revenue neutral. Shocking. False. We know that farmers will get pennies on the dollar for what they pay in a carbon tax. In a time of a global food crisis, we should be unleashing Canadian agriculture, not sabotaging it. So tomorrow's budget, will the Liberals admit this is a failure in the carbon tax? Will they do the right thing? Will they exempt Canadian agriculture from the farm-killing carbon tax? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let us be clear about the facts. The price on pollution means more money in Canadians' pockets and less pollution in our air. Even the member for New Brunswick Southwest acknowledged that our plan helps lower-income households the most, and we know that 8 out of 10 Canadians get more money back when they spend. I've spent significant time speaking with our agriculture workers and farmers, and they have said that they know the world is changing. They need support to fight climate change, and the price on pollution is part of moving forward hand in hand with farmers to build a better future for their kids, for their grandkids, and all of Canada.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Michel. Mr. Speaker, in the current information age, internet makes information available to everyone globally immediately. However, the power balances are unequal. For years, hundreds of local news producers have had to close their doors in Canada because of a lack of income, whereas the web giants literally have a monopoly on who survives and who doesn't. What is our government doing to counter this? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Saint-Léonard-Saint-Michel for this question and for her hard work. With the bill that we tabled, we are increasing journalistic independence across Canada. The web giants will have to compensate journalists when they use their content while ensuring a transparent approach that protects freedom of expression. That is essential for journalism for all communities who count on their local media, and it's essential for our democracy as well. Thank you.
For Dufferin-Caledon.
Trying to get trendy and virtue signaling and involving yourself in political demagoguery doesn't achieve anything. Now, who said that? Former Liberal MP Dan McTeague at Environment Committee yesterday talking about a tax on the oil and gas sector. That statement applies nicely to the Prime Minister's emission reductions plan. Energy costs, up. Greenhouse gas emissions, up. Canadian pocketbooks, empty. Virtue signaling doesn't work. Will the Prime Minister finally admit all he's given Canadians is economic pain with no environmental gain?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, we see the Conservatives take no seriousness in regards to the climate change challenges. We have again and again seen from these Conservatives that they want to make pollution free again. They want to continue to ignore the impacts today of the impacts of climate change and ignore impacts on future generations, whereas we know that investing in reducing emissions, investing in transforming our economy to be more innovative and clean is the best way to ensure a strong future from all Canadians from coast to coast to coast.
For Dufferin-Caledon.
I think the Prime Minister and I have a different definition of what investing is. This is what their investments have done. $60 billion since 2016 to reduce carbon emissions. And guess what? They've gone up. Now he's talking about $100 billion investments. So if it went up 27 megatons with a $60 billion spend, how much will emissions go up with this alleged $100 billion spend? Why doesn't the Prime Minister just admit it's not working, it's not fixing the environment, and it's costing Canadians billions?
Once again, Mr. Speaker, the Conservative politicians prove that math and science is simply not their strong suits. We will continue to follow the science. We will continue to prepare Canadians and communities and workers for the transformation of our economy, for the reduction.
Order. Order. Are you ready to continue? The
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the reality is when it comes to following the science around climate change, when it comes to doing the difficult and responsible things to prepare for the future, Conservatives choose to bury their heads in the sand still today in 2022. Mr. Speaker, Canadians from coast to coast to coast, no, we need to step up in our fight against climate change. We need to make investments to prepare the future, and that's exactly what we are doing.
The Honourable Member for Battleford's Lloydminster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This Liberal government excluded other levels of government during the collective bargaining process with the National Police Federation. The agreement reached is much higher than anticipated, and despite their exclusion, rural communities have been left to foot the majority of the bill. Rural municipalities who face greater financial constraints have been desperately asking this government for assistance with the one-time back pay costs. So, Mr. Speaker, will rural communities find relief in tomorrow's budget, or will the Prime Minister continue to stick it to rural Canadians?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this collective agreement allowed RCMP members to receive their first pay increase since 2016 and ensured that their salaries were in line with other police services across Canada. Municipalities and provinces were at the table since the very beginning of these negotiations, and I can assure the member that increased costs are shared by the contract jurisdictions and the federal government, just like all policing costs in regions served by the RCMP. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank once again the members of the RCMP for their continued service to communities right across the country.
The Honourable Member for London North Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The unspeakable and senseless acts of violence perpetrated by the Putin regime, including those recently uncovered in Bucha, demand accountability. This is why the RCMP will be deploying a specialized unit of investigators to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Mr. Speaker, would the Prime Minister please elaborate on the RCMP's intentions to assist the investigation of war crimes committed in Ukraine? Thank you very much.
Okay. Wait, so what's... Wait, hold on. Parliamentary Secretary should not be asking questions. So I know the Parliamentary Secretary. The Honourable Member for... Oh, that's the réponse. No, there's no question, and therefore there's no answer. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next one. The Honourable Member for Edmonton-Griesbach.
It has been almost 3 years since the final report on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls was released. The families who have lost loved ones are still waiting for all the calls to justice to be implemented. Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people are invaluable parts of their community, but they continue to face higher rates of violence. They deserve so much better. There is no time to lose to immediately implement all the calls to justice to help stop the violence and save lives. So my question is to the Minister, what are you waiting for?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government has been committed to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, to healing for the families, for justice for the victims of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls assassinations. These are things that we will continue to work on together. In tomorrow's budget, I can assure the member opposite that our investments continue to be there for Indigenous communities to move forward on the path of reconciliation, to promote healing and justice, and to ensure that Canada continues to share in the right path of reconciliation.
And the honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister's answers so far today suggest that no one has briefed him on Monday's report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. We have a chance to not be criminally irresponsible in this place and do what is required, and the IPCC says it's this: now or never. Emissions must drop in half by 2030, and our use of fossil fuels must peak and begin to go down rapidly, starting in 3 years in 2025. Does the Prime Minister understand IPCC science?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what we put forward last week was the most ambitious and concrete emissions reduction plan that Canada has ever seen. We know for many, many years, politicians of all different stripes have put forward aspirational targets of reducing massively our emissions, but no government until last week was able to put forward a concrete plan that actually demonstrates how we're going to reduce our emissions by 40% from 2005 levels in the next 8 years. This is something that we have committed to, we have demonstrated is doable, is concrete, and will deliver on the expectations of Canadians that they see a positive future for kids and grandkids while protecting the planet and creating good careers.
And that's all the time for question period today. Je pense un appel au règlement de l'honorable député de...
Point of order. The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata-les-Basques. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There have been consultations between the parties, and I think you will find consent for the following motion. That this House recognize that we must promote the inclusion of diversity within our institutions, that exclusion is not a method of inclusion, and that this House asks the government to revise the federal criteria for Canada research chairs in order to prevent exclusion in calls for applications.
Vous avez entendu la motion.
The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the honourable members moving the motion will please say nay.
Tu attendez now. Comme il est 15h18.
It being 3:18 p.m., pursuant to order made on Thursday, November 25th, 2021, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion of Mr. Chong relating to the business of supply. Call in the members.
I guess I'm not going to get to dispense, so, you know. It is. Good, good. The question is the following one. Mr. Chong, seconded by Mr. Paulus, moves that given the North Atlantic Treaty Organization Alliance has made an immeasurable contribution to peace, security, and prosperity for all its members. The House call on the government to increase spending on national defence to at least 2% of Canada's gross domestic product in accordance with NATO's 2014 Wales Summit Declaration. The 10-minute period for members voting electronically has started, and the House will now proceed